This is Micah Avni. He is an Israeli that grew up in an American, Jewish, liberal, progressive home. Big supporters of two-state solution, making peace with the Palestinians. Israel's got to give a bit so we can, make room for the other, all that kind of thing. And 9 years ago, his father was killed by an Arab terrorist. He made a video a few days ago saying that he's woken up. I think a lot of the Israeli public are waking up to the fact that the Palestinian cause was never about self-determination, human rights, and all those things, but rather about violent, radical Islamist expansionism, anti-Semitism, hatred of the Jews, all that. And therefore, that cannot be appeased. But what's most disturbing is that he has just announced that the terrorist that killed his father is set to be released. We know that there are these Palestinian prisoners that are being released in exchange for hostages. A few hostages for hundreds of prisoners. And I think sometimes in our minds we think, okay, well, ultimately that's a price we have to pay, and we don't think about the consequences of it. Here's a real life consequence, up close and personal. This guy who experienced a terrible family tragedy is seeing justice undone. As he said, I'll show you this video clip of his. He says, we may have released the next Sinwar. Sinwar was released in a prior deal, and he was the architect of October 7th. Have a watch of his words, and I think it's all the more powerful given the political journey he's been on.
It's quite possible that we just released the next Sinwar. One thing is for sure. Last night, the terrorist who murdered my father walked free. He was 21 years old when he carried out the brutal attack, slaughtering 3 innocent people in cold blood. Today he is 30, a proud Hamas operative who has never expressed an iota of remorse. 9 years in prison gave him the perfect opportunity to mingle with hundreds of other terrorists, learn from their experience, refine his skills, and plan his next attack. How many Jews will he murder and where? No one knows. Maybe it will be your father in a cafe. Maybe your spouse at the supermarket. Maybe your children on a school trip. I pray that it won't happen. But the numbers tell a very different story. 82% of the terrorists released in the Shalit deal returned to terrorism. This time, 735 terrorists were freed. That means 603 of them will go on to carry out future attacks. Thousands of Jews will pay the price with their lives. This is what will happen unless we wake up and change course. You cannot negotiate with terrorists.
As, by the way, a lot of people are saying in the comments, Israel should be implementing a death penalty. Anyone that commits acts of terrorism, death penalty. You keep them there in prison, and then look what happens. But I think this really gets to a deeper point, and it's something that it seems people that just look at reality or experience reality rather than thinking about it in, simply theoretical terms. But he actually lived it. His own father was killed tragically, murdered. What happens is you start to realize the implications of this appeasement tactics or some of the strategies that Israel's chosen in the past. People will say, Ollie, we should do anything to get back the hostages. And let's be clear, every single day, I pray for the release of all the hostages. They're protected from rape, pain, mutilation, injury, abuse, death. And the same for our soldiers, and that security and peace is restored to Israel immediately. The question is how we go about destroying Hamas and getting back those hostages. If someone says we should be prepared to do anything to get them back, just imagine if I said to you, we can get back the hostage, but here's a gun, you need to shoot this child. Would you do it? No, I don't think you would do it. So everything has a cost, everything has a price, and we all agree the question is this a price worth paying? Well, I'm not going to give you an answer. I'm simply going to lay out what the price is. The price of exchanging hostages for terrorists is, number one, you're releasing terrorists, which could put more harm and create more blood, which we've seen in the past, which was created October 7th. And number two is you set a precedent. This is something the Talmud warns against. It says, if the price is too high for hostage exchanges, and if it encourages more terrorism, it warns against it. Because the argument goes, well, by getting back hostages, you're telling our soldiers, you're telling people, Israel will not leave you behind. But isn't it also potentially telling Israelis that you are all potential hostage targets, because we have shown the world that we will negotiate with terrorists? Isn't that putting us in danger? Isn't the whole principle of not negotiating with terrorists so obvious, because it's saying we will not do anything to encourage terrorism? By negotiating, by saying we'll give you your terrorists back for hostages, aren't you encouraging an industry of hostage taking? Because you're showing it pays. So it's a double whammy. We all agree that the outcome we want is no more hostages to be taken, and for hostages to be returned, and for there to be peace and security, and to protect the people of Israel. The question is how you go about doing that. I have no doubt that both sides of this discussion and argument are well-intentioned. We're just disagreeing on tactics. And I think the principle of not negotiating with terrorists is innately sensible. And I think also, more importantly, what Micah Avni is saying about generally dealing with this conflict is becoming clearer and clearer to Israelis now, which is that we cannot have coexistence. Not because we didn't choose it, but because the other side doesn't want it. And they've shown us that for 100 years, and I think we've been in denial about it because it just seems so outrageous. So therefore, relocation of the Gazans, as the President of the United States is proposing, is the eminently sensible option. And yes, annexation too of Gaza. We fought for it, died for it. There's been blood, sweat and tears, resources put into this land all these years. There's a strong legal case for Israel having the right to their land, but even more than that, most importantly, biblically, spiritually, the creator of this universe designated this land to the Jewish people. Gaza is Jewish land. Thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.